Okay, it's 2 p.m., so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the University Writing Center's workshop on APA style. My name is Monique Bain, and I am the coordinator of the center. I will be assisted today by Miss Ernestia Frazier, who is our assistant coordinator. I don't think she's on yet, but she will be joining us soon. So I will just take a minute here and stop my video so that we could just focus on what's on the screen before us. Okay, so all of the information for this presentation today has been gathered from the publication manual of the American Psychological Association Style Guide, the 7th edition, which was recently published in 2020. And as you may know, prior to this version, we were using the 6th edition. But every so often, as there are changes in technology and the way that we gather information, updates are made to these style guides. And so just to give you a little sense of context, for instance, when I was in college or university some 20 years ago, we used the 5th edition of APA style. So in every edition, there are usually some updates and changes. And part of this workshop's purpose really is to look at what some of those changes are. Now, I intend to approach this workshop in 3 parts. First, we'll talk about formatting generally. Then we'll look specifically at how to write in-text citations. And then finally, we'll look at the reference page. I also will show students a little tip on how you can format your reference page in a very fast manner, especially trying to sort out that hanging indentation that I know a lot of students struggle with. So I'll show you a tip on how to do that as well. So if you have any questions, I think you have the ability to unmute yourselves. And I guess you can either place them in the chat or raise your hand, and then I'll try to get to them. Okay, but I will stop at the end of each section to take questions if you have any. All right, so why do we use APA style at all? Well, first of all, this style is used in many disciplines, specifically in the social sciences, like psychology, obviously, but also history and sociology. Sometimes it's used in other areas as well, like in business, in the discipline of the sciences. Keep in mind that there are other style guides that exist, such as the MLA style, which is the Modern Language Association, and that sort of governs the rules for writing in the humanities, English and literature and things like that, and Chicago style. So there are many others. But I think that APA style is fairly popular among various disciplines because it's very straightforward in terms of its format and in terms of the style of writing. So APA doesn't just actually govern formatting rules, but it also speaks to the kind of language that's used, the sentence structure, whether there's bias or not, so many other things. Secondly, using the APA style allows us to provide information in a consistent way. So in terms of the way sources are cited, and also, like I said before, in terms of the types of language or the style of language that we use, APA sort of provides guidelines for that as well. Thirdly, it promotes sharing of information among researchers. And because of the reference page, when we read a research paper, we can always access the original articles because all of that information is provided at the end of the paper. And so information is shared that way. And finally, we adhere to a style guide like APA in order to avoid plagiarism, which is a huge academic offense and should be avoided. And plagiarism, quite simply, is when we use the words, the thoughts or ideas of others, and we do not attribute those words to the proper source or give them credit for it. Now, something that's interesting about the APA Style 7th edition is that it has two formats, a professional format and a student paper format. So in this session, we will be focusing more on the student paper format because you are students. But the professional format is really designed for writers who intend to publish their work in journals, like the many journals that you consult when you are writing research papers. And so the practice at some universities has been that graduate students, those students enrolled in master's and PhD level courses, use the professional format, while undergraduate students use the student paper format, because most of that writing is really just completed to fulfill the requirements of a course and is submitted to your professor and is not intended for publication. Now, whether you are using the professional style or the student paper style, there are some formatting guidelines that are common to both. So APA requires that students type their papers in a standard font. The language used in the manual is a font that is accessible, that's legible, that's easy to read. Now, I have Times New Roman 12 point in bold print because my observation has shown me that most faculty at UB prefer that particular font. But if you are in a professor's class and they're not too specific about it, or they may ask you to use one of the other fonts indicated, that is acceptable as well. So you would follow your professor's guidelines as it relates to the style font that you use. APA papers are double spaced throughout and should be formatted with 1-inch margins all around, which I think is the standard formatting set in Word. So you usually don't have to go into Word and adjust that. It's usually automatically set there. Now this page highlights the order of pages in both kinds of papers. And you can see that the professional paper requires a bit more, but there are some elements that are common to both. So an APA style paper requires a title page, all right? The abstract is optional for student papers. According to the manual, students are not required to write abstracts, but it is up to the professor. Sometimes your professor may request an abstract, and that is fine as well. The student paper also has obviously the text, which is the body of the essay, and then the final page or pages would be the reference page. On the other hand, the professional paper has a few more items like footnotes, tables, figures, and appendices, and that list shows the order that these items should appear in the professional paper. However, the manual also notes that tables and figures can be embedded in the body of APA style papers once those tables and figures are called out in the text. And by called out, they mean simply referred to, for instance, saying something like in table 5 or see figure 5 or something like that. So now we're going to talk about the elements of the title page in terms of the student paper. The first item is the title of the paper. The title of an APA style paper should summarize the main idea simply. So APA doesn't really like a lot of fluffy language or flowery language. It likes language that's concise, not wordy, that's to the point. The manual recommends avoiding empty phrases like a study of or the examination of something, okay? So with most APA style papers, you can tell what the paper is about by looking at the title. The second item on the title page is the name of the person who wrote the paper, the author's name, and this is also referred to as the byline, okay? APA recommends that you write your first and surname and a middle initial just so that you're not confused with other writers. And so, I mean, you know, that can be helpful, certainly if you intend to publish, maybe not so much at the student level, but I know that in my experience, I've actually had a class where two students had the same name. And so, first and last name, that is. And so that middle initial really helped. Next is the author affiliation, and that really just means the university that you are currently attending when you write the paper. And this 7th edition asks you to also identify the department or the division that the paper is being prepared for. Next, you are to write the name of the course that the paper is being created for, and that includes the name in terms of its number and its official name. And the manual says that you should really follow your institutional material to determine what the name of the course is. So however the course is listed in Banner, for instance, or in UB's course catalog, then that's how it should be written in your paper. The instructor's name follows, and again, you should write it in your instructor's preferred format. So that may mean writing Professor Smith, that may mean writing Dr. Harry Smith, that may mean writing Harry Smith, comma, PhD. And you can determine your professor's preference pretty much by looking at the way they write their name on material given to you as a student, like a course syllabus. The last item is the due date, and this is the date that the assignment is due. Now, the manual points out that this date should be written in the month-year format used in your country. But because we live in the Bahamas, you know, we mix things up a bit. So we follow the British sometimes, we follow the Americans sometimes. So if you're following the British, that means that you will put the day first, then the month, then the year, no comma. But if you're following the US style, then it will be the month first, then the day, comma, year. And because it is the American Psychological Association, I think most lecturers sort of have the expectation that you use the American style because that follows the sample paper that's in the booklet as well. But the manual does point out that you do have a choice to do it in the order that your country normally presents dates. And something else that I want to point out before I move on to the next slide is that page numbering begins on the title page. Okay, so it doesn't begin where your introduction is, it begins on that very title page. So in this slide, I have a sample page, title page. The title is Still Waters, colon, the effects of stagnant water on mosquito populations in the Bahamas. Now, let me just say off the top that I know nothing about mosquitoes in the Bahamas. I just made this up. So this is not factual stuff and this is not a real paper. The title could have very well been The Effects of Stagnant Water on Mosquito Populations in the Bahamas as well. I mean, that's more concise, right? So this title is about 3 or 4 lines down from the top of the page. And then there's a double space between the title and my name, which is written in the format recommended. And below that, we have the Department of Biology, comma, and the name of the university or institution. This is a course that I made up, entomology, advanced entomology, which I understand is the study of insects. And I made up the lecture as well. I think I see a hand raised.
Yes, sure. Good afternoon again, once again.
Good afternoon.
When you're doing, what if you're doing, in terms of the naming, what if you're doing it with multiple persons?
Okay, so that's an excellent question. I know many professors at the university love group assignments and group papers. So if you are completing the assignment with a group, the manual points out that you should just continue to list the names with a comma in between them. And so you'll keep them on the same line, centered. And I mean, if it's a larger group, then you'll have to drop down an additional line. If it's just 2 authors, then you can write the names and connect them with the conjunction and. So it would be Monique Bain and Jackie Reed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And so we have the course designation, the shortened version of the course and its number. There's a colon that separates that from the full name of the course, which is Advanced Entomology. Now, in terms of the title itself, the major words in the title are capitalized, and the manual refers to that as title case capitalization, right? And so you may ask, well, what are the main words? The main words are basically all words that are 4 letters or more, but it also includes verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and pronouns. Now, minor words do not have to be capitalized, and that would be words like and, the, or in this case, the preposition on. It's only two letters, okay? Now, they don't provide a guideline in terms of how long a title should be, but the recommendation is that it should be as concise as possible and succinct, not wordy. Okay, so I will just touch on the title page for the professional paper, simply because I've seen, some lecturers kind of ask for this. So just in case you need it. So some elements remain the same: the title of the paper, the byline, the author affiliation. In this case, it will be the university where research was conducted, including the department, because remember, the professional paper is designed for publication. Now, this is a different element on the professional paper. It's an author note. The author note provides additional information about the authors. It could provide a disclaimer saying, we didn't do this or we did that regarding conflict of interest or something like that. It can also indicate where funding came from for the research or anything like that. So any additional information that the writers would want their readers to know. And then, of course, with the professional paper, there is a running head. Now, if you've done an APA style paper before in the last year, the 6th edition required running heads on all papers. But that is no longer a requirement for the student paper. It's only on the professional paper. And in the next slide, I'll show you what I mean by running head. But basically, it is a shortened version of the title that's typed in all caps and helps to and is placed in the header where the page number can be found. And again, page numbering begins on the title page of the professional paper as well. So this is my professional paper of the same title. If you'll notice at the top left, we have the running head, Effects of Stagnant Water on Mosquito Population. So that's a shortened version of the title. Maybe not so short. I guess I could have said impact of stagnant water on mosquito population. Once the running head gives a sense of what the paper is about, it does not have to necessarily reflect the same language in the title. So below the title, there's my name and the person that I research this topic with. Usually for professional papers, at that level, writing is usually more collaborative. So that's why whenever you do research and you're finding all these journal articles and they have like 1 million authors, that's the nature of academic work at the higher level. So very rarely will you find a paper with just one author. And then again, the affiliation is listed, and we can see that the author note is pushed down a bit, and it's written in paragraph form. And so it's not centered like the title and the names are. It's actually indented paragraphs for each new line, okay? And there's a specific order that information is presented in the author note as well. So starting with, for instance, Joe Blow, who worked with me, is now with the University of Wolf Road. He is no longer with the University of the Bahamas. So, people may want to know that. My disclaimer is that no mosquitoes were harmed in this study. And if you want to contact me, then you can find me at the University of the Bahamas. And so that's just an example to show you what a professional title page would look like. And of course, this is papers that are being considered for publication.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So you're saying that the author note is not required on the student papers. So if we include it, we could possibly have points deducted.
Well, this is what I will say to you. Confirm with your professor that he or she is expecting the student paper version of the 7th edition, because working in the writing center, I have seen some professors still require some things on the student paper that are not, like a running head or an abstract. But according to the style guide, no, student papers do not require a running head or should not have a running head. Student papers should not have an author note. I see some more hands raised. Joseph, Jean Joseph. And then,
that was me
that's
saying.
the way. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, Shanika, right?
No, Kathia. But can you go back to the slide previous before this? I want to just glance at that real quick.
Sure. Don't know why that didn't move. Okay, here we are.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, you just wanted to look at it? I thought.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I saw on the student paper, on the title page, that the page number should be there, but I know that some professors, all of my professors, we're not supposed to put the number on the first page. Like, the first page is supposed to be different. So with this new style, should the page number be on that first page or not?
If you're following APA style, the number should be on the first page, on the title page, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another question.
Okay.
I know you showed us the previous page with name and the course number and so on. The author's note goes on that same page?
Okay, so remember, the author note is only on the professional APA page. So that's if you're writing a paper that you plan to submit to a journal for publication. The student paper does not have an author note. APA Style 7th edition has guidelines for 2 kinds of papers: a student paper, which is mostly for undergraduate students, and a professional paper for those who intend to publish. And usually you're not looking at publishing until you reach the master's or PhD level, generally speaking, right? I don't know, did you see that slide with the student paper?
Yes, ma'am, I saw it. I just was saying, in case I mentioned, some lecturers may want the author's note still. That's why I asked.
Oh, okay. Well, it's really best to not confuse the styles, right? The student paper style was designed specifically because of these additional elements that really don't necessarily apply to students. Like, I don't really need to know whether or not there was funding for your research, because the paper that you're writing to submit at the end of a semester or something like that has nothing to do with that in most cases, you see? So there were some elements of the professional paper that really didn't apply to student papers, which is why I believe APA decided to make that distinction.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so now we're gonna look at the abstract, which I said is a requirement of the professional paper, and APA allows for lecturers to ask you to submit an abstract, but it's not a requirement of the student paper. But I just wanted to touch on the abstract and what it is. So an abstract is basically a brief, comprehensive, non-evaluative summary of the paper. It's not an introduction. it actually summarizes the content of the entire paper. So I should be able to read your abstract and have a good sense of what the entire paper is about. When you conduct research and you go into databases like EBSCO or JSTOR, and you're looking at articles that you may want to potentially use to inform your own research, you can read the abstract and sort of determine what it is they did, what they studied, what the methods were, right? So the abstract provides the purpose and content of the paper. It's a single paragraph. It's placed on its own page. It's not indented. The word abstract is bold and case-centered, not the entire paragraph. And the manual recommends that abstract should be really no more than 250 words. And of course, again, if you're writing an abstract for a journal that's intended for publication, then you also want to include keywords, and that helps with readers sort of identify the main points or concepts within a paper. And so I have a sample abstract here on the next page about my make-believe experiment with mosquitoes again. Please just remember, this is totally invented, all right? Abstract is centered, it's in bold. As you can see, there's a paragraph. This particular abstract is about 130 words. It starts in a little, a bit of a broad sense, giving a little bit of background. Mosquitoes are health risk, they cause disease. In the Bahamas, we have a lot of them, right? That's like the background. But then it also goes into what the study does. So this study focuses on how, on the way that stagnant water affects population growth. It tells what I did in the study. I collected all the stagnant water, I tested them in labs, and I found out that it was full of the Bitus maximus eggs. Okay, I made that up as well. And then my results. My results show that we have more of these mosquitoes in stagnant water than in active water or something like that, and the implications. So you can see that the abstract is not an introduction. It's actually a summary of the purpose and content of the paper. And then my keywords are listed below: mosquito, stagnant water, dengue fever, okay? Because those are the important concepts that I touch on in my make-believe paper. What I want you to notice also, the placement of keywords is indented, and it's also italicized, and those keywords are introduced with a colon. Okay, so we had the title page, then the abstract. Now we're ready for the text. And the text refers to the body of the essay. And all good essays begin with an introduction. Now the words on the screen are taken directly from the publication manual, and they're looking at the function of an introduction. It should address the importance of the work. It should contextualize the work, and it should state the aim of the work. So in other words, the introduction should consider why the topic is important. It should provide some background information about the topic, and then it should end with a thesis statement, or if you're doing quantitative research, might be a hypothesis or something like that, right? But basically the idea is you start broad and you narrow your way down to the focus of the paper. What I want you to note is that the introduction is not labeled introduction. Instead, the title of the paper precedes the introductory paragraph, which begins on a new page, right? So in terms of the rest of the text or the body of the essay, APA allows you to use headings as needed between paragraphs or between sections to organize your work. All new paragraphs should be indented and aligned left. So you shouldn't justify the page, okay? So all of your paragraphs should be indented 0.5 or the 1 tab space, I guess, from the left margin. Do not start a new page or add an extra space when a new heading occurs. I see sometimes students double up the space between the heading and the paragraph. Everything should be evenly double spaced throughout. And it should be noted that not all APA papers require headings. And this is from the manual itself. For example, a short 2-page student response probably doesn't need headings. So when a professor asks you to submit a paper in APA style, that could mean a number of things. They may just want your citations and your reference page to be in APA style. They may not necessarily expect headings for each major point, or they may. So these are issues that you will have to clarify with your professor. But yes, APA style differs from, say, MLA for the most part. Well, I think MLA allows for the use of headings, but APA is known more for its use of headings to sort of separate major portions of the paper. Now, when we talk about headings in a paper, there are 5 possible levels of headings within a research paper in particular, right? What I find is that most student papers stay at the first level of heading, meaning that if you have a thesis statement and your thesis statement has 3 major points, then each one of those points will be a heading: centered, bold, and in title case. That means the main words are capitalized, okay? And most papers just stay there. But in some cases, you may have subpoints under each major heading, and that's when the other level of headings may be used, okay? So if you have another level, then that heading goes to the left, it's in bold, and it's in title case. If you have another level, then it's to the left margin, it's still in bold, but it's italicized. And then if you have another level, then it's indented to the right, and so on and so forth. But like I said, most papers at this level really operate on that first level of heading, maybe the first 2, and in some cases, maybe the first 3. I don't think that in my entire time at the university, I've ever seen a student paper utilizing all 5 levels, not at the undergraduate level, okay? So this will be an example of a sample, well, it's a sample introduction. This is a different paper. I'm done with the mosquitoes, now I'm talking about global warming. So the effects of global warming on small island developing states, that's the title of my page, and that's the title that appears on my title page. But remember, with APA style, we don't write the word introduction, we just repeat the title instead. And so that's the main thing that I want you to see here. And then my first level heading is rising sea levels, because in this particular paper, there are 3 main ideas I'm looking at: rising sea levels, increasing temperatures, and powerful hurricanes. Now that I look at my invented thesis, powerful hurricanes shows up first. I'm about 1, 2, 3, 4 lines from the bottom. That's my thesis. And so really, powerful hurricanes should have been my first heading, because you want your heading to sort of follow the order of ideas in your thesis statement, so your readers can stay with you. Oh, but I did want to point out with this introduction as well that I sort of start very generally talking about global warming, defining the term, quoting someone, and then I narrow to my thesis statement, which is what a good introduction should do. So I will make the information on these slides available to students after, so you can read that at length at your leisure at a later time. So I wanted to talk about, before we get into in-text citations, some additional elements that an APA style paper may have depending on your discipline. So if you are, for instance, a biochemistry major, you may see these headings more frequently than someone who's writing a paper for, I don't know, English, right? And so these are additional elements that may be in a research paper, especially when you're doing your own original research. Let's say you have designed a questionnaire and you're submitting it to people. I often see students sharing SurveyMonkey and all these results. So when you're doing that type of quantitative research, then These are additional headings to consider. The method, which describes the approach that you took to your research design. The results is basically the raw data, the information that you receive. And then the discussion is your interpretation of that data and what conclusions you can kind of draw based on your results. And then finally, the reference page as well. Now, I also added appendices and content footnotes because sometimes professors may ask you to submit, for instance, a copy of your questionnaire that you circulated or whatever. If you're in psychology, maybe you use one of those, what do they call it? Like diagnostic tools. That's not the word, but it's something like that, right? So that kind of sort of extra information that doesn't really impact the body of your paper can be added at the end as an appendix. Okay. All right. So that ends the first portion of my my talk. Formatting. We're now going to move into the next section, which is in-text citations. Any questions on formatting before I move on?
I do. I have a question about the author note. I did English 120 last semester, and
Right.
we were told that the author note is on the same line as the text, and there's the author note, comma, and then the text at the bottom of the page. But I see it as appearing above the text, and then the information is below it. So what exactly do we do?
That may speak to a difference between the 6th edition of the APA style and the 7th.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not sure if I lost you.
Oh, I got you.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. Any other questions? All right. I think we're looking good for time. All right. So I'll move into in-text citations.